Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I would like to start by acknowledging and paying my respect to the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land that I'm on today. I pay my respects to their elders past and present. I also acknowledge that we are all on Aboriginal land across Australia. Sovereignty was never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Marie Mitchell. I'm a proud Yorta Yorta woman and the leader of VALS statewide community justice programs. I've worked in the community sector for 15 years across ACO or Aboriginal community controlled organisations and within Court Services Victoria. Prison is an unsafe space for our people. It is not rehabilitative and it does not keep communities safe. Through my work, I have seen and continue to see the impact that the criminal legal system has on our people every single day. It is a system that perpetuates the same colonial violence that began on 26th of Jan over 236 years ago. As of the 2nd of Jan 2025, there have been at least 582 Aboriginal deaths in custody since the release of the Royal Commission report into this issue on 15 April 1991. While at least 22 Aboriginal people have died in custody in just 11 months. Yet still, as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, we are the most over-incarcerated people on earth. This overrepresentation is not coincidental. It is the direct product of ongoing colonialism, dispossession, racism, and marginalisation. But despite this, our culture has survived the harmful injustices that have been inflicted on us for 234 years and given us strength to continue the struggle for justice. Our mob, even when incarcerated, demonstrate unwavering resilience and strength in the face of a system designed to break them, holding on to their hopes and aspirations for a future where we can all heal. I'm fortunate enough to witness that strength in my work too. One of VAL's community justice programs is Bagaruk, a program that supports women who are transitioning out of prison. We provide each participant in Bagaruk with transitional housing and support to find employment and reconnect with community, culture, and country. The Bagaruk program is open to all women and welcomes trans, gender diverse, non-binary, sister girls, brother boys, intersex, and two-spirit queer folk who identify as women and feel comfortable accessing a woman's housing service. Many of the women that come through the program have experienced family violence. They might have underlying mental health issues and are very highly vulnerable. But the strength they show through this transitional period reminds me why I do the work that I do. I'm inspired every day by the incredibly determined, compassionate people that we work with. One day I'd like to see a criminal legal system founded on rehabilitation, early intervention, and prevention. But in the meantime, it's important that we make sure we are holding the systems that continue to cause harm and trauma to our communities accountable. We need to expand programs like your Rook Justice Commission, which serves as a vital truth-telling process. It plays a critical role in shedding light on the injustices and systemic harm that our communities continue to face. By amplifying our voices, we can help pave the way for healing. VALS has also been undertaking the Aboriginal Community Justice Report project, which has fundamentally changed the way we view sentencing, improving outcomes and reducing the over-incarceration of Aboriginal people. The project's impact was recognised with the 2024 Excellence in Indigenous Engagement Award. These insights and recommendations must be implemented at all levels of the criminal legal system to ensure any meaningful change. Some of our other key advocacy areas for VALS within the criminal legal system include parole, prison healthcare, and youth justice, areas where mob continue to suffer under systemic injustices, which we'll explore further in today's webinar. So as we lead up to another Invasion Day, a painful day for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people around so-called Australia, we are grateful to have you join us for such an important conversation. Over the next hour and a half, we'll be hearing from an incredible panel of First Nations people. Each have their own unique experiences of the criminal legal system and each amplify that burning spirit that lives within all of us, strength within. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge Stacey and Felicity are joining on the same screen today, just if there's any confusion. But firstly, I'd like to throw you to Stacey Edwards. Stacey, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Stacey Edwards. I grew up on Wamba country and I identify as Tanarong, Bunurong, Bunurong woman, and I spent 8 years in the prison system so far.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Stacey. Also joining us today is Jonathan Binge. Jonathan, could you please introduce yourself?
Yama, Yawan, Ginagayo Yumum. My name is Jonathan Binge. Gimilaray, Dungari, and Gubenge. I was born in Moray. That's my country, but currently living in Army now. So, yeah, just black fella moving through the motions, I mean. That's my little, you find out more. Anyway.
Deadly. Thanks so much, Jonathan. And last but not least, we have Felicity Chafer-Smith. Felicity, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Flick. I'm a Nudgee woman from South Australia. I spent a lot of my younger years in prison. I've been out for 5 years now, so lots changed. But yeah, glad to be here having a yarn with you all today.
Beautiful. Thanks so much to all of our panelists for introducing yourselves. Just a content warning before we start, we will be discussing issues that will potentially include references to Aboriginal and/or Torres Strait Islander people who have deceased, self-harm, trauma, violence, abuse, and racism. If any part of our discussion raises issues or concerns for you, we encourage Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to call Yarning Safe and Strong on 1-800 959 563. You can also reach out to 13 Yarn, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men can call Dadi Manwaro's brother to brother line 1-800 435 799. And more broadly, anyone can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Those contact details will be shared in the chat section. Thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to the conversation ahead. Briefly introduce some of the programs that I manage in community justice. One of those is Bagaruk, and so arising from Bagaruk, there's a case study that's very close to my heart and highlights the lengths that our team to go to ensure that the women coming through the program are supported in a meaningful, holistic approach. The following case study is de-identified. So Mary, not her real name, entered Bagaruk midway through 2024, so last year, after an accepted expression of interest was received from DPFC. This was following some intensive work by the Bagaruk program staff to get her confirmation of Aboriginality completed, so she was able to enter the program rather than continuing her stay at DPFC. Through staunch advocacy and community knowledge and connections, Bagaruk program staff were able to obtain the COA or confirmation of Aboriginality within a 24-hour period, and those in the sector who might know that often this can take in excess of 6 to 12 months. So brilliant advocacy. Mary then entered into the Bagaruk program. However, within the first week, Mary was taken to the local hospital. After a number of emergency tests, Mary was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer and was transitioned into palliative care support. Initially, she's able to be supported in the community. Bagaruk supported an internal referral to Wirraway, which is VALS Police and Prison Accountability Legal Service. Due to the lack of healthcare and support she was provided whilst at DPFC, Wirraway have been able to pick up the case. However, this will be dependent on Mary's health and ability to participate in the proceedings. Within the first couple of weeks, Mary spent significant time at health appointments, which the Bagaruk staff were honoured to be able to support her with and partnered to attend. This consisted mostly all-day appointments within a very short time frame of her initial diagnosis. To support Mary outside of these taxing health appointments, the Bagaruk program staff support her culturally by engaging with a local ACO's women's program and elders program. Bagaruk was able to support her to travel interstate to visit family as she'd had new grandbabies born that she had not met yet and wanted to be able to spend some quality time getting to know the grandbabies and her children before her health further deteriorates. VALS was able to support this by funding flights, transfers, and accommodation. Bagaruk staff also played a key role in the broader care team by supporting engagement with the medical team, the crew worker in the hospital. This was welcomed by Mary as she often spoke of feelings of information overload and struggled to remember the appointment details. Bagaruk staff actively participated in care team meetings to support a holistic approach to her health needs and to ensure that she received culturally appropriate care. Noting Mary's deteriorating health and her wishes to live with her partner and dogs while she can, Bagaruk staff heavily advocated to and with Aboriginal Housing Victoria, or AHV, to find a suitable property to move into in a much shorter time period that can often be achieved within the current housing market. Mary was offered a 2-bedroom property where her partner could move from regionally and also bring their beloved dogs. This meant that Mary had the dignity and her most important request staunchly advocated for in such a crucial time. The Bagaruk program staff expressly advocated to extend the post supports for Mary and included to support her with transport, advocacy and other referrals where she requested them. Mary verbally expressed and had told Bagaruk program staff, without the support from you and other program staff member, I would not be where I am today, and I thank you for all the support you've given me. This participant had also stated both Bagaruk program officers were able to manage and get onto tasks that she was needing support for in a timely manner and ensure that there were positive outcomes. Through the support period for Mary, she's been able to successfully transition back into the community by attending fortnightly women's and elders programs. I received case management from another ACO, engaged and shared in great community spirit where needed. I feel inspired by our clients and the strength and resilience that they show every day. Incredibly proud of the Bagaruk program for providing women with the ability to exit custody earlier to a safe, secure and supported accommodation with holistic needs and a strong cultural response for the women with the aim of reducing impacts of incarceration and reducing recidivism. We now have the chance to hear from our panellists about their experiences, learnings, strengths and challenges. And I'm going to start by asking Stacey some questions. Stacey, you describe yourself as a grandchild of the stolen generations. Could you please tell us how this has impacted your connection to your culture and influenced your work as an artist?
Well, my grandfather was stolen generation and his 9 siblings were also. He thought that just because he lived in Melbourne that he was Wurundjeri. So when I worked at the Queer Heritage Trust about 15 years ago, I learned and identified the language groups that I do today, which I do my signature style is diamond patterns that were traditionally used on our shields and possum skins.
Well, thank you. I'm wondering, can you tell us about some of the challenges that you faced while you were in prison and how your art that you just touched on helped you express and navigate your experience?
Well, I spent 7 years in the prison system altogether. I've been out of prison for 18 months now on parole, and I still have 9 months to go on parole. The challenges I had in prison were there was no real sisterhood in the prison. It took a lot to adjust with a long remand. I was on remand 2.5 years. It was hard accessing mental health care and medication. It was hard adjusting, obviously realising that prison officers are not police officers, just the general routine of prison life. I was really fortunate when it came to my art. We had a Koori art class at the local TAFE, so we had a space dedicated to allow me to explore different styles and mediums.
Thank you so much for sharing. You spoke a little bit about some of the challenges that you faced whilst you were in prison, but I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about your transition out of prison and what supports were or were not available to you?
Well, VALS was there, obviously. It was the first organisation that I reconnected to when I left prison, and they were fantastic, transferring all my prison health records to their system, making sure that all my health issues were followed up and cared for. Jodie Chatfield from Ullum was fantastic support. The Torch program was obviously amazing. I did my community service here at the Torch, and which led to paid work employment, and now I'm permanent part-time here. One thing that I didn't have housing, so that was probably the biggest thing. And challenges for women in prison is you can't get parole pending housing, and you can't get housing pending parole. I was really fortunate that the money I saved up from selling my artwork through the torch, I was able to put a deposit on a house when I left prison.
I just want to acknowledge that for a moment. That's brilliant. I know, certainly in Bagaruk, I consistently hear from women that there are issues around housing, and that's the biggest barrier to them exiting, particularly for parole. But the fact that you've been able to kind of use your art to set yourself up, in your own property, woman to woman, I applaud you in that. That's really brilliant. Okay, all right, I'll go to the next question. Sorry, that's really, I'm
Considering
so
there's a
proud
few
of you.
people to own property once upon a time, it's a great achievement for me.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you.
Thanks.
What do you think needs to change in the parole system to better support Aboriginal women, especially around issues like family violence and housing?
Yeah, there has to be a better understanding around family violence and how complex it is, especially they need to understand, like, culturally as well, how that affects us. And when we integrate back into the community, there's a lot of shame around family violence, obviously. And I didn't speak a lot about it for a long time because it was part of my court case. So I didn't talk about it. I didn't get help for it. I'm getting professional help now, which is fantastic, that JIRA is paying for. So I get to see a psychiatrist every couple of weeks to talk about family violence, and that's been really beneficial. I think the biggest barrier with parole is how much restrictions that have been put on me, and the hardest things to adjust to has probably been having a GPS monitor on my ankle.
Thanks for your candid responses. I'm hoping if I can just ask you one more question, I suppose. What advice would you give to younger Aboriginal women who find themselves caught or engaged with in the criminal justice system?
Some advice I gave women when I had spent a few years in the system was basically, yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. Just do what you're told and get on with it. It's the only way I was able to adjust the system, pick my battles, and what was worth walking away from and what was worth standing my ground with. Use the AWOs to your advantage because they're great support. I couldn't have done it without Annie Kinley, Dottie Chatfield. Just keep your head down and work hard. Keep busy. Do all the programs, wake up every day, another day gone.
Thanks so much for that. I'm going to now throw to Jonathan. Jonathan, you've done so much in music and community work. Can you please tell us a bit about your journey and what motivates you?
Moray, small country town, not much living off if you know the history of Moray. To the big city, Melbourne, like you're transitioning from low income to no income over this way, where it's just like the cost of living, even in 2005, 2006, like bread, nothing hard living way. Like took us a while to go through. We went through most of the women's refuges, just me and mum, until we landed in Heidelberg. And from there, it's like pretty much just a revolving door, Some of our first joint contacts with police was family violence. And by the time that I was around 8 years old to 9, police knew me by my face and name in my community. Hague Street, it's right, I have my school just to the back of us on the flats. And then straight across was the old police station. So they were right there. Got too many things to name, man. If I was going to be sitting here, it's just cliff notes that I'm trying to give out, but it still go long ways. Police brutality against me, watching people in community, that same very way, And then before mum passed away, I was starting to fall in with the mob in my area, just trying to get that community love in that kind of twisted sense where it's, all of us are living in similar conditions. So if you ain't really going out and doing what these mob is doing, then you got to be smart and go through school. But that wasn't me, I had a lot of problems through school, a lot of racist teachers that I just clashed with and my mum clashed with. So also my mum didn't tell him about me having ADHD too. So I was just a bad kid. But yeah, like just mucking around, you know, just trying to like rebel because I'm seeing the stuff that's happening in my house and I've got no other outlet. So I'm not really gonna like try and focus in that way, like professional way, you know, or whatever they was trying to do to me. Like I just found it all like real indoctrination way. So I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to assimilate like that. And I just never went the way that they created the system, you know, and went into those pitfalls. Just like it's working the way that they intended. And the pipeline from my community to youth detention, like it was quick. So by the time that mum did pass away, this was around 2013, like I'm 13 years old. I've got two options, you know. I've got to like go back home and live up Marie way, figure it out like that, or stay down this way and continue what I was doing with the people that was in my area. So I chose to do that. Me and my younger brothers, I'm the oldest out of 5, but 4 of us live in Melbourne, this way. We were split, but that wasn't after being moved around place to place, house to house. Had placement for a while, and then I kind of like dipped out of there for various reasons. And then we were separated. They ended up staying with there, and then I'm down this way. We've got different dads same. So I didn't want to live that way. And it was also like a 3-bedroom house and 3 young mob. So I kind of like let them have their space. I also didn't want to go back up home and be further removed from my younger brothers. So from 2014 to the day before I turned 18, I was in out-of-home care. That kind of environment just fostered the same behavior that I was like falling into, and that becoming my routine. It's just like going out, searching, doing the things I do. So I'm happy to say today that I went from being represented by VALS in court to jumping on this panel and speaking with GMOB. It's been a long road, you know, like trying to figure out what regular life is. Like I barely made it through school. Like I got a year 12 equivalent, and like I don't intend to be studying more. I love working with my community. I love writing my music. Like I like speaking, doing whatever I can to kind of like get myself in a better headspace. But it's hard, you know, like got a lot of mob passing away, and that brings up so many feelings for me that like puts me back in that mode. So I want to transition the way that I fight, and I don't want to do it in that way no more. I'm trying to be open to like the work that I'm in now, and I'm happy that like I got to meet mob like Roxy and more, Marikionis, Nayuku Gori, and like linking up with Tallulah Brown through my work when I first started with FYA. It's the first like all black fella team that these mobbers had, and we've done a lot of deadly stuff through there. So I like to think about my experience with that and like the stuff that I built off of like writing workshops and mentoring with young black fellas that way, when it was like, how do I get them to see that like me expressing my way can also be an available tactic to them to like push themselves out of poverty. So I've kind of just been, you know, focusing on keeping it like that, trying to be positive in myself in a way that I like need to kill the cop in my head, you know?
I suppose I'm hearing you talk, and we've heard from Stacey a little bit. I know we haven't heard from Flick yet, and I acknowledge that we're online, but I just really want to take a moment to acknowledge how powerful and how staunch our panelists are. Like I'm hearing your story, you know, obviously I've seen your tiles, I've seen, you know, a little bit about you, but hearing your stories and just hearing how powerful you guys are and how you're sort of rebutting the system. Any wonder you guys are panelists here today. It's amazing. My next question for you, Jonathan, you did touch a little bit on your work with FYA, but can you expand on how have your experiences with child protection and youth justice systems influenced your work with FYA and your involvement with young people in the music space today?
So I'll separate those a little bit. With FYA, the lens that I kind of come at my work with is how would I, as a young person in that situation, want to come into these spaces and like trying to make it as available and open. The sign up process, you know, something as simple as that, as like being able to get on the phone to a black fella that's running this program and working through the sign up sheets or however it be to like join into the program or activity that we got going on. I kind of come at it from that lens because throughout my years, there was like various programs popping up around the area for at-risk youth at the time that really like helped shape the way that I think about my future. I think about the openness of some of the people that you would call mentors or like workshop facilitators, the way that they interacted in like a holistic sense, but also just being genuine in who they are and not trying to put on like, I know everything, or like, I've been around, I'm older, this is the way that we kind of like do it around this way. Like just being really open to taking either criticism or like being able to slow down the way that they run these programs and try and serve community in the best way that they can. That's like the only lens that I view this through, is like, if my programs and the stuff that I'm trying to run ain't available for young black fellas that grew up the same way that I did, then I don't want to run them at all. And I don't want to be a part of that work at all. So I try and operate through that way and make sure that it's as accessible and there's not as many hurdles to jump through. I'm not the manager of this program, but you see it in like the things that we've done through like Seed and Strength, which is one of our grants programs, making it sort of like a decolonial process. And even in the way that we want like black fellas who go through that program to report or like show the way that their programs have played out and the impacts that not just they've had, but we've had in conjunction with work out, like being able to offer more than just the money, but the services to go out and help if needed, or like different ways of operations that we've like pulled together when it comes to logistics and running events, and just making the actual process of it as easy as possible, where you can just like jump on the phone and we can run through it with you. But I think back to experiences in this work like Black Up, which was run on Wunda Jamara country, and you know, we worked in partnership with Frame to do it on the open side of like one of the sacred sites. And it was all about, it's like full multimedia conference vibes, you know, like there was a bunch of stuff happening throughout the event where we would talk to stuff like this, where how do we get out and escape the system or work around it, because as we know, like they intended it to keep us down. And the trickle down effect that policies like all through white Australian policy times like have affected mob and then passed off to other at-risk communities or like BIPOC communities, the over-policing. We went from talks like that to just like pieces of art being stationed throughout those days, and then like ending each day on a musical performance where we had various like black fellow artists from across the country come through and share their experience, but share their experience in a fun way, you know, where it's like music and all that. So there was a lot through that, and you know, there was a lot of solid young black fellas that was like real staunch, similar way to the panellists here and me, you know. It was so solid just watching them like sit in their power, learn things, but also like we've had deadly feedback from that program in particular, where it's like some of these mob have looked onto what their future looks like, whether it be professional way or like just trying to like escape the system in that way. And they've pointed to that experience with all of those solid mob coming out on sacred country as like something that still drives them today, which is really special. And then the other piece with music, I swear to God, like I wouldn't be alive today if I wasn't right. That's just as simple as it is, bro. You know what I mean? Like I watched so many bodies get put in the ground. I knew for a fact I was coming up next. Like that was just how I was living, you know? Bro, I'm telling you now, if I wasn't writing, I wouldn't be alive today. Like that's just it.
I appreciate your vulnerability in that space, and I think it's really important for all of our audience to hear these genuine and real experiences of mob that have gone through, you know, various government system and government agencies. Okay, so my next question is, having experienced the child protection system yourself, what do you think are the most important changes that are needed to better support Aboriginal children and young people in care?
The only answer I can offer up is like black fellas with their parents, you know, not having that kind of system in place. like whatever that looks like, and whether it be like the monetary thing where different ACOs or like black follow run programs or just like sovereign programs for the older mobbers, just like going out and doing it, camping up that way. If it comes to funding, I know particularly in Victoria, like these mob Vic Poll through 2024 and 2025 have got 4.51 billion committed to them. So if we're talking about funding, defund them dogs, you know? Put that money back into community in a way that we want to run stuff and support black fellas to be with their families. And I know that across these sovereign lands, like Brad, how many other domestic terrorist organizations similar to Vic Poles have gotten funding as close to that? And black fellow community run programs, ACOs, and whatever else it be, anything where black fellas is working in, how many times have our funding been pulled? Or how many times have we had the gate closed on us? And right now over in like Tasman way, you know, like these mob are fighting for their land. And they're getting out young black fellas to come and fight for their land too. But it's all like that way, you know? It's like young black fellas need to be with their people and learn staunch ways, because we are the people of this country here. It's in us. This is our motherland. This is our homeland, you know? We're not owners, like we're caretakers. It's synonymous with us. So these mob need to be back with their family. That's just how it is. It's the only option.
Just got two more questions. So I suppose my second last one is a similar question to what I posed to Stacey. So for young people who are currently navigating the child protection system or who are at risk of entering the youth justice system, what advice would you offer?
You know, this ain't your system to navigate. We need to act as the antithesis to what they've created. So as much as they want to remove you from your people, you fight harder to stay with your people. You do everything in the opposite way that they want you to operate in. And that's just how I was able to like keep with mine, you know? But still, there's like, it's so simple, bro. Just do the opposite of what they want you to do. I left that place with a stack, like biggest mob of yarns, where all of these workers and stuff knew about my life without even getting to speak to me or meet me in the first go, you know? Like, you need to just operate through that lens. Like, stick hard with your mob. And it's hard when you've been separated for so long, and particularly for mob that have gone through the stolen generations, you know? Like, they did that intentionally. So if you feel it in your spirit, yes, you black fella, bro, like, you need to understand that your community's out there waiting for you to just join home. And I had to fight to really like go back to my community while I was living in there. But I was able to advocate for myself as that young black fella that grew up off a strong black woman, you know? And I got me and my younger brothers all to fly up like on Berry Street's dime. But that's just because I was like not shutting up and not letting them push and pull me in whatever way that they needed to make sure that I was just like the silent one sitting in that room and just like drying out by myself. And it sucks that like we have to be those ones to really like work and keep it in that way. But the fact is that it's a job to them. Them mob are gonna come through, work, realize how much this is killing their spirit, because that work is like so far removed, and it's just, I don't know, enacting assimilationist process and continuing the genocide of our people by removing us further. Like, it's going to kill their spirit too. So all the deadly ones that come through, especially if they BIPOC, they most likely ain't going to stay in those positions. So while, yeah, they're in there and they're going to fight for you for a little bit, you know, you need to just soak up as much as you can off them while they're there, because they're not going to be there forever. Just do whatever you can to get out of there, bro.
I just want to take a second to shout out to our comms team. So many hashtags that I pulled from what Jonathan just said. But as a rapper, how do you think music and artistic expression can help young people in vulnerable situations navigate their emotions and experiences and build strength and resilience?
I think when it comes to this, it wasn't much in the methodology behind like the thinking of it. And it's not until now that I'm able to look back on it in hindsight. I think back to something that my psychologist told me, where that whole process of holding something within your body for so long and like mentally being trapped in that kind of jaded way where you're a slave to your experience, writing down and having something go from the mental trauma to a physical piece of work, it then becomes not just your responsibility anymore. it goes from just a mental thing stuck within your head to a physical piece that you can choose to do whatever you feel. You can express it to other people. You can pass that paper to other people. Or you can simply just burn it and it doesn't exist anymore. But the symbolic piece of like getting something out from being stuck inside your head to a physical piece that is no longer just your responsibility and your soul bearing to hold on to. I always think back to that when I'm writing. And if I'm intentional about writing and I know that I'm feeling through that day, then I might move to the paper, you know. But we got phones and all that now. But it's so simple. Like, these are just concepts, you know. Being able to express in any way, whether that be art, whether that be music, whether that be writing, or whether that be filmmaking, like putting your mental into that space to like grow out. You know, you think about the brain as like a skill tree, and things that you extend and grow the more that you actually do it. Build up those kind of network, you know? You just like stick with it, you do it, you express in that way, and it's going to help you eventually because it's not just your responsibility anymore.
Beautiful, amazing advice. I suppose I've spoken a little bit about it kind of through as a theme through your responses, and I really wanted to hear that because I think young ones coming through, you know, whether it's child protection or youth justice system, I knew that that would speak directly to them. And if not them, you know, if we've got workers or if we've got care team or if we've got adults in those young ones' lives that can kind of draw on your advice for our babies coming through the system. Alrighty, Felicity, I'm going to throw to you now. So can you share a little bit about how you first got involved with the Torch project and how you feel it has shaped your journey since?
So I started going to prison the day after my 18th birthday. That's when I first got locked up. But they were just small sentences off and on. I was using substances, so by the time that I'd withdrawn from that and started actually balancing out, I was already back in community, and you know, the cycle kept going kind of thing. It wasn't until my last sentence, which was almost 3 years, I was given, you know, the opportunity to figure out what I really wanted in life and how to take steps towards it. And so I started attending Korea art class at DPSC, and that was where I got introduced to the torch. So it was then Senior Arts Officer Paul McCann. He came in. I'd never painted before. He was amazing. He was fabulous. And he helped me and coached me and guided me how to get the visions I had in my head of these paintings and how to put them on canvas. So I'm an Aboriginal woman from South Australia. The library didn't have much information about my mob and, you know, everything that I wanted to learn. So the Torch put together a resource booklet all about my mob, brought it in, and basically that really got me going. I exhibited and sold my first painting in 2019 in our biggest, so the Torch's big annual exhibition called Confine. My artwork was called Pilaki, so that's Nudinjeri for palette. And that was kind of where everything changed for me, making that first sale and knowing that somebody like really wanted my painting. You know, they went out, worked hard, made money, and they purchased my painting to put on their wall in their house. And it kind of empowered me to make me realize that maybe I could be more than what I just had been labeled by the community and the media when I was going through, you know, those challenging times and making those decisions. You know, when you call somebody dumb so many times, they start believing they're dumb. So after that first sale, I thought, maybe I'm more than just an addict and a criminal. Maybe I'm an artist as well. So that really fueled the fire to keep learning. There's a lot of traditional line work that my mob does, so that's always been a constant throughout my artworks. And when I paint the lines, it kind of, you know, you've got to have a steady hand, you've got to control your breathing to be able to get those clear lines. So it became a real self-soothing and healing process, and that became my new way of self-medicating. I didn't go to the drugs when, you know, things got hard to deal with. I picked up the brush and, you know, would start zoning out and paint, and that's how I quietened my mind then, and it's how I still do it now.
So staunch. So you've described a little bit about your time at DPFC, and within that was time in the management unit several times whilst being at DPFC. Can you explain or can you shed some light on how these units work and how being in them affected your mental health?
Yeah, so in my earlier sentences, like I said, I was, always coming down and all over the shop kind of thing. And I was young, so kind of got myself into a bit of trouble here and there. Ended up being in the management unit, so we call it the slot. And basically it's just being in one single cell for 23 hours a day. And it was funny, that little video that you went to play at the start with the technical issues, like that is, I don't know who made that video, but it is so accurate. The only way that you communicate with the other women is if you're down on the ground talking to the other women through the air vents in the doors. 1 hour a day you get to go out for airing and be out of that cell, but it was going out into a caged area. The ground was just dirt and weeds, and on top of the cage I remember there being like dead birds. During that 1 hour you can have the option of making a phone call. You can book in a phone call a day if they happen to be at work or on the loo and miss the call, then that's it. Too bad, so sad kind of thing. So yeah, it's a crappy place to be. And you're going to come out of being in the slot worse off than you went in, like being locked down, not having human interaction, not being able to do anything. A lot of the people in the unit had severe mental health challenges, and what kind of a world does that? Lock someone down 23 hours a day just to sit with their already unhealthy thoughts? So how is that supposed to fix anything? I never understood it.
Thank you so much. So sobering for me, certainly first-hand experiences, sorry. You've mentioned your medication prescriptions and that you sort of obviously you had medication whilst you're inside, but that these were changed without the necessary support to manage the transition of medication. And you experienced a 2-week dry period while incarcerated at Dame Phyllis. How did this lack of support impact your health, and what does this say about the quality of healthcare available whilst incarcerated?
So I just want to start off with saying that I know that the healthcare provider people have changed over since I was last in prison. So cross fingers, the women are being looked after a bit better now. But back when I was in there, my puppy dog died when I was in prison. And obviously that hit me really hard. And I was already on medication for depression stuff. And it was okay. It was, it was managing it. But when I went through that episode, it was just horrible. So I went to the psych. That took me a while, because anywhere to get anything done in prison, you've got to fill out a form, put it in a box, and wait to hear something. So did that. They finally got back to me. I went up to see the doctor, which then put a referral into the psych, and the psych goes, "Oh, we'll change your antidepressants. But to do so, you've got to have, a dry out period of 2 weeks where you don't have any medication." And during those 2 weeks, I couldn't get out of bed. I could have stopped crying. I wasn't crying, I was asleep. I tried putting in to see a psych during that 2 weeks, and because of how long everything takes when you're inside, I didn't get to see anyone until my medication just changed. So what was already a horrible situation of losing, my fur baby, it was drawn out an extra few months because, my body was completely adapting to no medication, then new medication. I remember when I first got locked up, when I was in community and, not traveling well and stuff, I wouldn't take my medication because it was pointless when I was, taking substances. When I'd get locked up, I would go back onto my antidepressants, and because I didn't have the drugs, and to be able to get into a doctor to get a prescription and stuff, that would take so long. So I would be completely unmedicated and just, not in a good space at all.
Alrighty, I think so. You did touch on a little bit in terms of your phone visits and kind of barriers and lack of, especially those to family, were what helped you get through the tough periods while incarcerated. Can you talk about the importance of remaining connected to your family and how the high cost of prison phone calls can be detrimental to the overall well-being of people who are incarcerated?
Absolutely. The phone systems in prison, aside from, snail mail, are the only way that you can keep in contact with family. So it's so important to be able to keep an ear out on what's going on at home, make sure everyone's okay, keep them up to date with your court, what you're doing, if you're okay. Prison calls was $12 for 12 minutes to call a mobile. Otherwise, it was usually about 30 cents depending on where they are in Victoria if it was a landline. That went for 12 minutes as well. Who's got landlines these days, really? And then you're sitting there trying to make, trying to make a redirected landline number go to your mobile, and that's not actually legal. So you're all trying to do it on the low, but not all your family members are kind of, down with technology to figure out how to do that. So it cuts what little support you do have, it cuts it back heaps. If you're not getting money from family or friends put into your account each month, you get given such a small portion. That's if you're working or if you're on remand. So, and the money that you do get from the prison, from working or being on remand, it was also the money that you get toiletries with to be able to wash yourself, that you get, any kind of little snacks to be able to eat something that the prison doesn't give you, kind of thing, stamps to write letters for, family, friends, things like that. And then to add those phone costs on top, it's crazy. It's so hard to stay connected.
Thank you so much. I think what I'm hearing, a lot of our mob have kind of that innate sense to, or ability to try and work within the system to get the best of what we can. And I'm explicitly speaking about the redirected phone calls to a landline to a mobile. That's brilliant. But, drawing more on what you're saying around the constant competition of, in terms of to support your well-being and your mental health, or your mental health well-being, I should say, is, do you want, food? Do you want connection to kinship or family? Do you want connection to culture via way of, you might have elders or family members or, mob connections that you're constantly trying to prioritize on really limited resources. Thanks so much for sharing that. VALS and VACCHO are working on a piece of advocacy, really staunch advocacy, really opening up and bringing the ACHOs into into the prison setting. So hopefully, we're not having to choose as much between, our cultural connections and our healthcare and other kind of competing needs. So I'm just going to moderate some questions from the audience. Got lots of comments. Mob from joining all across the state, which is brilliant. Is there any questions that are jumping out that people wanted to ask? I suppose this is kind of your opportunity as I read through them. Alrighty, here's a question, sorry. And it's aimed at Stacey. So Stacey, you mentioned that prison officers are not police officers. In your experience, what's the difference?
So my experience with Victorian police officers is usually racism and prejudice. So from Wamba country, I was constantly put in lockup for walking home from the pub, just simple things like that. When I got to prison and I met the prison officers, I would describe to my family that they're almost like support workers and that they're there to help you get you through the sentence. But, like everybody, like all groups, there's good and bad in all groups. You occasionally get the bad officer who wants to write you up for everything. But generally, my experience with prison officers was okay.
Thanks for that. I might open this up to all of our panelists, if that is okay. I suppose reflecting on your time whilst you were incarcerated, how do you think VACCHO could be supporting our mob whilst in prison? I suppose if the advocacy piece gets up, or how would you like more broadly our ACOs and ACHOs to support you whilst in prison?
Well, definitely. I mean, when we're in prison, they've got no women's clinics, for example. So, you don't want to talk about women's business to white doctors when we can have our own services that are culturally safe to talk about those issues and understanding. So VACCHO would be a fantastic help if we were able to access it in the prison system.
Thanks so much, Stacey. I suppose Felicity or Jonathan, I might throw to you. I might just quickly jump in. For those that may not know, we've explained what an ACO is, so Aboriginal Community Controlled Organisation. My reference to an ACCHO is Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation. So just, I suppose, explaining for those who are joining in that may not know.
That show could support us in prison. Yeah, the women's clinic, that's a good idea. Or I remember facing a lot of like judgment because I hadn't had my health taken care of. Or so when I go in there and you were first like brought into the prison, there was, when was your last this? When was your last that? And it's like, I couldn't tell you. And then it was just judgment and assumptions and things like that made on me. So, it was already felt crappy being in a crappy place. And then that just was, amplified. But also dental. It's good that we can access like coming up to bars to go to the dentist, but you have to be sentenced, you have to be in there a long time, things like that. It would be good if, we were able to access those services on site or, more regularly.
But I think staying connected to community-controlled organisations whilst in prison would make the transition easier when you come back out to the community. You'd already be connected to these organisations, and then it'd make parole a whole lot easier because you can say, well, I'm getting my health needs met here, I'm getting my mental health needs met there, I'm doing women's groups here, I'm doing domestic violence awareness there. It would have been fantastic if I was able to access all these community-controlled organisations while I was in prison.
Easier transition.
Yeah.
I suppose the key from what I'm hearing you guys is kind of the continuity of care and the continued support from culturally appropriate services for our mob. Just before I go to the next question, I just wanted to check in with Jonathan. Did you want to jump into this question?
I think, yeah, for me, so while cutting through like Young Wayne, it was secure welfare that I was sat in for their maximum term that they're allowed to hold young people while they try and find placement. And for people that don't know, like secure welfare is like baby jail way. And like my experience even going in remand, like I didn't even receive my CRN while I was sitting in there. So, I wasn't even able to access like food and all of that and talk to my mob on the outside. So for me, I'm not really pressed on blackfellas being able to go into prisons and help other blackfellas. I think my main focus would be like deconstructing prisons so blackfellas don't go in there in the first place. So that's why I was happy for these mob to yarn to that. I'm not too like, obviously, like we don't belong in there.
Got one question Morgan's asked, so huge thank you to the panellists for sharing with us today. We've heard a lot about the strength and success of Aboriginal-led programs and services like Dadi, The Torch and FYA. I'd love to hear from the panellists about why it's so important to have these programs and why Aboriginal-led programs are so successful.
I think at a minimum, we know who we're talking to and like serving. It's our community. It's as simple as that. Like they're only successful because blackfellas are running and are in their processes of building up these programs. Like how many countless examples of white-run programs that have like pushed and served themselves inside a black community? How many times have they just like served to be completely colonial, like having to have these duties of care and like mandatory reporting processes? Like, do they really serve us? Are they really in there to support and help us get out of the structures and the ways that like modern day Australia has become this big machine to feed us into prisons again? Like blackfellas running and working within these programs and not having to sit within that colonial process of like, this is how professionalism looks within community. They work because we know who we're serving and talking to.
Beautiful. I just realised I did not mute myself, so I apologise. You heard all of my agreeing with what you were yarning about. I'm so sorry. I suppose Stacey and Flick, did you have anything to kind of add for that question or point? I suppose more broadly around kind of why are Aboriginal-led programs so important and successful, particularly either in, whilst you're sort of in custody or as you're transitioning out?
When I left prison, I attended a women's group at the Preston Health Service. Just been around mob and they had open arms for me. Everyone knew I just got out of prison. I shared that willingly. Have that safe space to go to every week and connect to community and connect to art was a great for my transition.
We've got a question specifically for you again, Stacey. So given you were in prison for 7 years, what do you feel helped you most in prison to cope?
Art, yeah, it's similar to how Flick described doing art. Art used to feel like when I did art and I painted, it felt like I wasn't in prison. So I would paint for hours and hours and hours on end, if I could, just to escape prison life, block it all out, just be in a trance. Art was my best ally in prison.
I suppose a couple of more questions we might cover. Second last one, someone's popped in the chat. So Jonathan, then doing your amazing music now, do you feel you are well supported currently in community? And is there anything you feel would help you more to succeed further?
One, I've had to hold on to the memories, things that I've done that I can't let go. There's mental barriers that I've still had to try and break down. I think the way that I see it, and this isn't for everyone because mental health is a journey that you take within yourself. If I'm not on top of keeping connected to my community, that's on me. But at the same time, the way that my depression works in particular is when I find myself spiraling and getting inside those patterns again, then it's easy for me to sit within myself and fester in that. So the only way for me to break out of that is to go and do things within community. No matter what it be, is just connecting with my people, talking with my mob. It's it's hard to be a black fella and understand, one, they want to make you a subject, and two, after it's all said and done and you finally get the tick of approval to being an adult, all of the traumas and things that are being brought upon you and stuff that you've had to endure, and also the things that I particularly put myself through after learning a lot of those behaviors, it's a big undertaking to kind of break those walls down and learn about our particular context. So it's a lot to sit with, knowing the structures, the policies that are built upon wanting to steal our land and wanting to break our people. Sitting with that and knowing the simple day-to-day ways that the colony has with me, all from leading to these big concepts and structures. It's hard to sit with. So it's on me to break it down, but also it's a big undertaking for our community to continue to fight. And I look to the older mob that are out there speaking on our behalf, particularly as a young person. I'm 25 now. I know it's on me to keep my mental health up, but it's also a great thing to have a support system that you can rely on. And I'm happy throughout my life that I've had 3 younger brothers that I need to keep myself okay for. Can't speak to other mobs' experience because there's so many mob I know that have taken the other way because they didn't have those support systems, and it still kills me, So it's it's a hard one. It's a hard question for me because I'm still trying to learn and take care of myself.
Again, I saw a couple of comments pop up, but again, I think thank you for your rawness and thank you for, sort of being so honest in this space. I've got one more question. I might ask Flick first and then I'll open it up to our other panel members, and I will, I suppose, say, respond to the level that you kind of feel comfortable, and safe to. But thinking we're, a couple of days out from Invasion Day, what does Invasion Day mean to you as formerly incarcerated mob? And what change would you like to see on First Nations justice?
Not a day to be celebrated, that's for sure. It is Invasion Day as a, very clear, we were okay before, we got colonized. Like, it's not something to look back and reminisce on in a good kind of sense and celebrate. It should be acknowledged as a day of mourning, a day of sorry business, where like people should really put weight in their acknowledgement over what transpired, back then, and how it continues to transpire in today's society, with mob. And I, change the day, do what you want. That like I don't agree with how it is now, and it should have been changed. It shouldn't have even been turned into a day of celebration. It's not something to be proud of. It's not something to be glorified. That's my opinion.
Thanks so much, Flick. Stacey and Jonathan, did you have anything to? I think Flick was pretty staunch in her response. Open it up to either of you if you want to kind of yarn or put in your perspective.
Well, for me, 20 years ago, I used to get so broken-hearted and twisted and bitter about the day. What helped me heal through that was attending Share the Spirit Festival in Fitzroy Gardens through Sunlines, and then referring to the day as Survival Day. My culture has survived this day, which makes it easier, but it should definitely not be a public holiday, and it should definitely not be celebrated. Yeah, that's my opinion.
I think for me, the colony is punitive and intentionally disrespectful. They survive on withholding, and they like to revel in the misery. I don't think there is any way to celebrate Australia as a place, concept, or structure without glorifying genocide and the continued attempt to assimilate our people. Fuck this day. I don't want no Australian nothing. I'm not Australian. I'm Gomeroi.
You hear, brother?
I want to say I'm speechless, but I'm not. I loved your responses. I loved the tenacity, the rawness, and the power of your responses. I think as mob, we all really struggle with this day, whether we call it Invasion Day or Survival Day. I personally really struggle with it. I know for myself in the lead up, certainly we sort of start getting into January and I can kind of feel that pressure building. And I keep saying to myself, don't read the comments, don't go on Facebook, don't go on socials, like don't, I'm even mindful of like wearing mob clothing, just, out and about in public, being mindful of, what racism we potentially might attract because, it seems to be amplified, particularly post-referendum. So I certainly stand in solidarity with all three of you personally and your responses. But I will say a huge thank you to all of our amazing panellists today. We're incredibly grateful to have you so generously share your time and experiences. I'll also note and I'll acknowledge we've had quite a few mob in the chat echo, but to our two Auslan interpreters, thank you so much for your excellent interpreting today. We're appreciative. I did see one comment explicitly note that your participation was the only way they were able to engage with our webinar today. So hands on heart, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone who has joined us in the audience today. It's encouraging to see so many people engaging with such an important topic. We encourage you to take some time over the next week to reflect on the things that we've discussed today and how you can support Aboriginal communities in working towards a safer legal system that is focused on prevention, early intervention and rehabilitative approaches. We also encourage you to having ongoing conversations about First Nations justice more broadly beyond this space today. If you'd like to support the work that VALS does, you can make a donation at vals.org.au/donate. Each donation over $2 is tax deductible and allows us to continue fighting to keep our people out of prison and connected to family, culture and community. And if you can, please get down to one of the many Invasion Day events on the weekend. I know Stacey and Flick have already yarned about the Share the Spirit via Songlines. A reminder that if today's discussion has raised any issues or concerns for you, we encourage Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to call Yarning Safe and Strong on 1800 959 563. You can also reach out to 13 Yarn, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander men can call Dadi Monwara's brother to brother line on 1800 435 799. Those contact details will also be shared in the chat section. Thank you so much for joining in. Thank you to everyone who contributed in our chat. Thank you to everyone who will reshare this from the VALS Facebook or social site, and we hope to see you at the next webinar. Thank you.